landscape.
Hello, welcome to the conversation here on News Central Television. This is the show where we bring you all the latest political updates on the continent. I'm Gbenga Aborowa.
And I'm Rita Omodia. So many stories making the rounds in the political arena on the African continent. And we know also that former Burkina Faso President Blaise Compaoré has been handed a life sentence by a military court due to the 1987 assassination of the revolutionary leader Thomas Sankara. We'll bring you more details across the continent as we have so many stories making the rounds. We'll go for a quick break and we'll be right back with the conversation.
You're welcome back to the conversation. Now, as a means to end the feeling of injustice and give the people a sense of inclusion, Nigeria's two main political parties, the ruling All Progressive Congress and its opposition, the People's Democratic Party, has transitioned from military to civilian rule, have practiced presidential zoning, a political practice where parties agreed to split their presidential and vice presidential candidates between the North and the South, with the origin area of each candidate rotating between the two regions. But as parties and candidates begin to prepare for the 2023 elections, the opposition People's Democratic Party has thrown its presidential ticket for the 2023 elections open. This means the party has abandoned zoning, an issue that has been a major topic of discourse in recent times, with many Southerners opining that the presidency should be zoned to the south in 2023.
Now, according to news reports from a senior party source, the decision was reached during a meeting on Tuesday by the 37-man committee headed by the governor of Benue State, Samuel Ortom, set up by the party to decide the zone to get its presidential ticket for next year's election. The party had been divided between leaving its presidential ticket for aspirants from all regions of the country to contest, or ceding it to the South as a mark of fairness, considering that President Muhammad Buhari of the All Progressives Congress, who is a northerner, would have completed 2 terms of 4 years each by May 2023. And now, joining us live for this conversation, we have Gani Taofikyes, Publicity Secretary for the People's Democratic Party in Lagos. And we also have Demola Olarinwaju, political and media strategist, also based in Lagos, Nigeria. Gentlemen, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Demola, for joining us. Now, in a video circulating online, we saw the governor of Benue State, Samuel Ortom, stating that the 37-man committee has unanimously adopted a position to be adopted for the presidential ticket that will be sent to the NEC, but did not clearly state the position. Now, following this, there have been reports of a no zoning presidential ticket. What's your take on this particular position that probably the presidential ticket for the PDP will have a no zoning and to be open for all regions of the country?
Well, I think that the committee report, from what we are hearing, nobody has seen it officially yet because it has to go to the NWC from where it goes to the National Executive Council, which is the NEC. So nobody has seen it officially, but from what we are hearing, the committee took a position that zoning is affirmed, but for the exigency of time, because the time is short, that, it should be thrown open because you have aspirants from all over the country already purchasing forms, who have purchased forms. You cannot exclude them from the competition at this time without risking breaching the electoral law. So that's the position of the party. And I think, it is a very fair position considering PDP's long-standing principle on zoning. PDP is a party that has adhered to the principle of zoning, not just in terms of, not just pre-election as a pre-election principle, because, the truth is that everybody has always been free to contest in the People's Democratic Party, right from 1999. all the way to 2015. The only time you had an outright zoning was in 2019, and the committee at that time, made it clear that it was as a result of the issues that had attended the 2015 election. So everybody has always been free to contest. The PDP rarely takes a position, officially on the principle of zoning. But in line with the national mood, which is that, APC has had 8 years of the presidency and it has been in the north, PDP decided to, give a critical look at the matter. But at the end of the day, I think, this will only make the politics more interesting within the People's Democratic Party and would only make the emergence, make whoever emerges be a very strong candidate.
Now, Demola, Nigeria, as it is today, is made up of different ethnic groups, and we're in the 21st / 22nd year of our uninterrupted democratic experience since 1999. We know how people get with sentiment. Do you think we're at that point where we will have to negate a zoning and religious sentiments and just go for the candidate, the best man for the job or best woman for the job? Are we there yet? Or we still have to cater to ethnic sensibilities?
I honestly wish we were there. I honestly wish we were there because, there are serious issues to grapple with. There's the economic issue, there's insecurity in the country, you have growing poverty in the land, you have all sorts of problems. The conversation is the ethnicity of the next president, not necessarily the competence of the next president or the capability of that person to resolve national issues. I think, this, for me, it only plays into the hand of the All Progressive Congress, which is the ruling party, because, the only way the All Progressive Congress can win the next election is to win the zoning question, or to say, oh, we are zoning to the south, and then make it look like we are going to give you an opportunity to also have your own shot at creating an ethnocentric government. But, the issues of 2023 for me are far more than that. And I'm confident that, the People's Democratic Party will have a candidate at the end of the day who will be able to tackle the issues in the country.
So, Demola, how did we, sorry to butt in there, Demola, how did we find ourselves in this position? 62 years post-independence, 22 years uninterrupted democratic experience, and we're still having this mundane conversations. Why are we in this position today about ethnicity and religion when we have myriad of problems, like you rightly alluded to in your statement?
Well, to be fair, Gbenga, the truth is that the APC has not managed the diversity of this country well, if we are being frank with ourselves. Look, under the People's Democratic Party, you had a government that was all-inclusive. You had a president who was from the southwest. You had the vice president who was from the northeast. You had a Senate presidency that was firmly in the southeast, and so on. Everybody was carried along in the governance structure. The southeast mainly feels that it's a shot at the presidency. It's because in this present governance circle, the Southeast is not reflected. They are not president, they are not vice president, they are not Senate president, deputy Senate president, speaker, deputy speaker, party chairman, secretary to the federal government. You don't have anybody of Southeast origin in that governance structure. And, it is a basic factor, in terms of governing a multi-ethnic country, that everybody, every ethnicity, every zone must be carried along. And so when people are not carried along, the ethnic issue now starts to dominate the conversation beyond what it should be. And so I think, it's primarily a failure of the ruling APC. And what they are trying to do, I think, is to tie the hands of the People's Democratic Party, to force the People's Democratic Party to pick a presidential aspirant from where they also want to pick, whereas while the APC was an opposition, the APC always went to the north. You had General Muhammad Buhari contesting serially, on the platform of his various parties from AMPP to CPC and then eventually to the APC. The other component of the APC, which is the ACN, they also went to the north repeatedly from Ribadu, they always went to the north, until they ended up with Muhammadu Buhari. In other words, the onus of zoning is not on the opposition party. The onus of zoning is on the ruling party because, to be fair, People's Democratic Party does not really have anything to zone. You are not in control of the presidency. So what exactly are you zoning? You can only zone what you have, But what I'm confident about is the fact that, whoever emerges on the platform of the People's Democratic Party will be somebody who's competent, will be somebody who's acceptable to all ethnicities in the country, and that person will have no option but to uphold the PDP principle of making sure that he runs an all-inclusive government.
All right, Demola, still toying on the reasons for this zoning. You've mentioned so many reasons why this zoning has been put in place, especially to ensure that the people, especially those of the South, are actually included. We know that zoning isn't necessarily enshrined in the Nigerian constitution. However, it is in some constitution of some parties. So does Article 7 of the party not state that the party will adhere to the policy of the rotation and zoning of party and public elective offices in pursuance of the principle of equity, justice, and fairness? And if so, if you agree with me, would you not say that if they agree to an open declaration of presidential ticket, that it will actually negate the policies of the party?
No, I think we need to understand. Rotating, you can't rotate what you do not have, and you cannot zone what you do not have. When we say the rotation and the zoning of offices, we are talking about what the PDP actually has, which we've seen play out. The national chairmanship was zoned and was rotated. The national position of national secretary, offices that the PDP holds, and in states where the PDP governs, you have rotation and zoning. But what are you rotating? Exactly when it comes to the presidency of Nigeria. I mean, the president of Nigeria for the past 8 years has not been a PDP member. And so you can't exactly rotate what you do not have. You can't also zone what you do not have. And what usually happens within the PDP is this. A candidate will emerge from a free and fair process. When that candidate emerges, offices will now be zoned in accordance with where the president is coming from. And I'll give an hypothetical example. Say, everybody goes to the field and the Southeast wins the presidency, the presidential ticket of the PDP. Someone from the Southeast wins the presidential ticket of the PDP. It now behoves the party to take that position that has been democratically arrived at and say, since the presidential aspirant is from the Southeast, you now zone the VP position. You zone you get the concurrence of all the other zones to say, look, you will be SGF, you will be VP, you will be deputy Senate president is going to this place, that Senate presidency is going here, and so on. So that's the idea behind zoning. When you are out of power, you don't have what to zone. Basically, there's nothing to zone and there's nothing to rotate. So really, it's just a conversation in APC or about APC as the ruling party that is spilling over into the PDP, and the party has responded robustly to it. I mean, 37 people gathered, one representing each state, and they all came together and said, look, let's leave it open. Zoning still remains intact. And that's the first takeaway from what we have seen of the report so far, that zoning remains intact. But for the exigency of time at this point, let's allow everyone to contest, and whoever wins will now zone on the basis of that.
Okay, I get your point, Demola, because you get to the convention first, and then when we see the candidates that emerge, they can go ahead and zone. Now, Demola, a lot of observers have discussed, they've described Nigerian political parties as special purpose vehicles to get political power, and not with, they say some of those parties, a lot of them don't have ideology. That's why you see a lot of cross-carpeting and decamping between parties. If you look at the ranks of the APC today, even executive governors and people in executive offices have moved over to the ruling All Progressive Congress. Some have accused the PDP of not knowing how to play opposition politics, because the APC was in opposition for 16 straight years. How do you respond to this? How vibrant is the People's Democratic Party an opposition in Nigeria?
I think Nigerians need to understand that the ability to play opposition is not necessarily equal to the ability to govern correctly. We had the present ruling party, the APC, while they were in so-called opposition, they had answers to everything, talking about how they'll build refineries, talking and criticizing PDP on all issues. Now they are in governance and things have become worse. So the ability to play good opposition is not equal to the ability to perform well in governance. The PDP record is there, the APC record is there, and I think that's what Nigerians should look at. And of course, you also have the fact that PDP governors are presently among the best performers in this country. It's not a coincidence that governors all over the country, like Governor Nyesom Wike, like Governor Sheyi Makinde, and all these other guys, are some of the best performers in the country. Now, as to the ideology of the party, the PDP ideology is what helped the economy of Nigeria to be strong because it's a market-driven ideology. It's a market economy. It's a market-led economy under the PDP. In other words, you won't find the PDP government banning the sale of this or that, banning imports or closing the borders or trying to overregulate the foreign exchange market. The truth of it, for me, is that politics in Nigeria is not yet advanced enough to the point where the ordinary man on the street will be able to tell the difference. All they feel is the effect of it. All they feel is the effect of it, basically. But that's why you had the Democratic Party, of course, which they then criticized. The APC government how well that aspect, because at the end of the day, the welfare psychology.
All right, Demola, you're really raising very valid points on the issue of ideology of political parties, and I think Gbenga, that's been one of the major issues in Nigeria, especially
politics,
in political arena, of whether parties actually have a good ideology to actually carry the people along in politics.
I also wanted to ask him, because he said the PDP governors are some of the best performing governors.
I was also on that point.
Why would Dave Umahi and Matawale of Zamfara State decamp from the PDP to the APC if it's such a great party?
Even aside from that, we had the issue of even fuel scarcity. If you go from Jonathan's time, we also had debt profile there. I think it's all building up.
One of the things, and I think it's the major lessons as we develop our democracy and evolve, is the ability to play opposition politics is not the same as being in government. He said, and he rightly said so, when the APC was in government, when the PDP was in government, the APC had an answer to every policy, everything that was going wrong in Nigeria. Now they've had 7.5 years, yes, and I mean, where are what's the difference? Yes.
I think that puts a question to all Nigerians. I mean, as 2023 is coming closer, we need to look at more of what exactly these candidates are actually bringing, because we see so many candidates all piling up, and we even see campaigns coming up, and it's a question for Nigerians: what do we really want as a candidate, not even necessarily as the party?
And do you agree with him? Demola said something about Nigerian political parties not having a lot of difference in ideology.
I don't agree with you on that one. I don't. Okay. All right, joining us live on the conversation while we still await Demola Olariwaju. We also have right now, we have Taofikyes Gani joining us, and he's the former publicity secretary, of the People's Democratic Party. Thank you so much for joining us on the conversation, Gani. Now, looking at this video that came about, since you're in a position, even though as a former publicity secretary of the People's Democratic Party, what's your take on this news going around that the party will actually effect a no-zoning presidential ticket? Okay. All right. I wanted your position on the news going around that the People's Democratic Party will have an open presidential ticket, that is a no zoning for the presidential ticket for 2023.
Okay, I don't think we have that connection.
Okay, we do seem to be having a network problem with him though. Taofikyes, can you hear me? Can you hear me? All right, we do hope to have him.
I think we have Demola back online, so... Yeah.
All right, that was the former publicity secretary of the People's Democratic Party. We're hoping to have, because we really need to get a proper information, because we have news. Some people say yes, speculations and all that.
But from what Demola said, being a member of the People's Democratic Party, I think we can assume that will be so. It'll be open, possibly. And then after the person gets a ticket, then they can zone the other executive positions.
Well, we'll wait for the position of the NEC Committee of the People's Democratic Party before we can finalize. Right now, we'll go on a quick break. And when we come back, we'll have more stories on the conversation. Do stay tuned.
You're welcome back to the conversation here on News Central Television. In the first half of the show, we did talk about news of the opposition People's Democratic Party in Nigeria throwing their presidential ticket open, saying no to the zoning formula. Now it's time to switch gears and look at political happenings in Sudan. Sudan's powerful pro-democracy movement has called on its supporters at the capital and across the country to rally against military rule on Wednesday, telling protesters not to leave the streets before ruling generals are forced out. The security forces were expected to deal harshly with the rallies dubbed the April 6 earthquake by the security forces, who closed the Nile bridges in Khartoum on Tuesday night and reinforced their presence around the sites where the demonstrators are likely to gather, such as the Republican Palace and the army headquarters.
Now, in other developments, a former militia leader in Sudan has denied committing war crimes and crimes against humanity as his landmark hearing opened at the International Criminal Court. 72-year-old Muhammad Ali Abd-al-Rahman is accused of leading thousands of pro-government fighters on a systematic campaign of murder, rape and torture during the height of violence in the Darfur region of Sudan between 2003 and 2004. The trial is the first at the International Criminal Court to deal with the Darfur conflict, and campaigners have said it shows that no impunity exists, even for crimes committed nearly 2 decades ago. Now, join us live for this conversation. We have Otilia Anna Mwanganidze, Head of Special Projects Office of the Executive Director, ISS, and Abdelrahim Abayazid, Sudanese political activist. Welcome to the conversation.
Thank you for having you both.
So I'll start with you, Abdelrahim. We heard of this April 6 earthquake demonstrations. How will it differ from others, and what's the update on the protests going on? Because we've seen series of protests even before this particular one going on in Sudan, especially as against the military coup.
The development that is a unique one, actually, and in spite of Ramadan, the holy months of Ramadan, where people are fasting, they still wanted to go out and protest in these numerous, huge numbers going outside to demonstrate and to demand the revolutions, demand and to insist that they wanted to that democracy and freedom and peace. Plus, this is not just in, as we said before, this is not just in Khartoum or on the big cities. This is everywhere in Sudan now. It's totally different. 6th of April is a symbolic day to the Sudanese people, which is, we know all about 1985. And then 2019, this is when people, first 1985, the dictatorship Numeiri, and now is in 2019, the dictatorship, the murder al-Bashir being thrown out. So it is very symbolic to Sudanese, to many generations in Sudan, that the generation whom attended and participated in 1985, and the generation now who they participated in 2019 when they throw out Omar al-Bashir. So people have been preparing for this and wanted to go out and to say, in spite of all the crucial force that been and the crucial force that be violence that been from the government forces and the militia. And this is meaning a lot, and to us as human rights defenders and the Sudanese people as that achieving their to achieve their goals. And plus all of this, I mean, like there is a big thing happening here in Sudan that the neighborhood resistance committees are uniting. There is a statement being issued yesterday by these committees, which they were like in. There were two proposals that the revolutionary court and the establishment court. They united together and they came together with all over Sudan, and they call themselves in this statement the Resistance Committee of Sudan, not just
not different factions. Yes,
and this is a milestone in the struggle of the Sudanese people to gain their rights and to gain democracy again, and to overthrow the military, the Islamic military junta.
Okay, Abd-al-Rahman, just before we go to Atelier, I would like to stay with you here. The protest groups are unrelenting. There's been almost daily protests since October last year. They're dogged in the calls for full transition to democracy. And they've also said, like you rightly said just now, that the complete overthrow of the military council and bringing its members to justice is what they seek. Are they being unrealistic with the demands to assume that the military that has tasted power in Sudan will just hand over to civilians without a fight? Are they willing to compromise in any way?
There is nowhere for compromise with this. I mean, like there is no way for compromise here in this situation, because people went into streets and they say no legitimacy, no negotiation, and no to the military. So. And this has been the demands from day one, from the 25th of October, and before that. I mean, like even since the overthrow of al-Bashir, people know that this is the security committee of al-Bashir. So now most of the Sudanese people, this is parties, and even those whom they were in a coalition with an agreement with the military. Now they are not with that. So it will bring the country into on hold because of the demonstrations, because of the strikes that's going on. What will the military do? Like today, I mean, like as you can see, everybody's out on the streets.
Yeah.
Military is not being that harsh today because everybody's watching, and even those soldiers who are doing this, they are not up to it now. I mean, like up to what? I mean, like they wanted to kill all their people now? Up to now, we have like more than 95 people being killed by the government and the militias supporting the government by this military government. So they have to I mean, like respond the government or whom they are in the power now. They have to respond to the Sudanese people. This is what we want.
Right.
We want democracy. We want total civilian rule in Sudan.
All
and there is no way back. We are opening a new era in the history of the world. Actually, we are adding to those things. This is our people, what they are doing. There is no way for negotiation. There is no way for compromise. Military to the barricades. This is the most important demands, and then will come the civil government, the democracy, the parliament, and this is all being planned and written and negotiated among the Sudanese youth and the Sudanese forces. And this is a way. There is no way to say
All right, Abd-al-Rahim, so no going back on the protests until they get a full civilian transition. The protests will continue, Abd-al-Rahim. Thank you so much, Abd-al-Rahim. Let's hear from
Definitely.
Okay. Otilia now, so you've heard from Abd-al-Rahim, the protesters are saying that they will continue, and we've had this so-called protest starting from Jamiri in 1985. We had Omar al-Bashir against Omar al-Bashir in 2019, and right now they're continuing with their protests. Now we have the first ICC trial on Darfur crimes, a crime against humanity. We had Muhammad Ali, also known as Ali Kushab, that's the Janjaweed leader. Can you expatiate and tell us who is Ali Kushab and what are the charges that Kushab faces at the ICC?
Thank you very much. Now, the trial of Ali Kushab is a long time coming. His arrest warrant, the first arrest warrant issued by the ICC for him, dates all the way back to April 2007. So that's 15 years ago. And between then and today, essentially, his trial had not started. He was, of course, arrested and handed over to the International Criminal Court in 2020, and processes began. But I start with this history and the fact that it's been 15 years since the arrest warrant to speak to the key challenge around impunity and the gap thereof. Now, Ali Kushab was one of the senior commanders of the Janjaweed in Darfur. He served in support of the Sudanese government under al-Bashir, and essentially stands accused of not only crimes against humanity, but also war crimes and potentially the crime of genocide as well. This is a slew of crimes that range from pillaging, looting, to sexual violence crimes, as well as unlawful attacks against civilians. So it's a broad range of crimes that have been alleged to be committed by Ali Kushab. But he's not the only person who is implicated in the Sudanese conflict in Darfur. In fact, he is only the first, but al-Bashir himself, the former president of Sudan, is also an inductee of the International Criminal Court on similar charges. I think the question now, not only for your viewers, but particularly for the people in Sudan, is whether this initial step towards accountability will in fact lay bare the crimes committed under the al-Bashir government before it, and whether it paves a good way forward for the civilian protests and a move towards a more democratic government in Sudan.
Now, staying with you, Otilia, how did Koshai come into ICC custody, and why is Ali Kushab's trial and verdict significant?
It's a long story, and I'll go back to 2007. At the time Ali Kushab was indicted, he was obviously someone who was within the favor of the government of the time under al-Bashir. That meant that he had quite a bit in terms of protection, even as he was a person who headed a rebel movement. This was a movement that supported the Sudanese government. But of course, he was arrested in 2008 by the Sudanese authorities, and then they later released him. Between 2008 and 2020, where he was believed to be across the Central African region in Sudan, in South Sudan, and later in Central African Republic, he evaded justice. He was then arrested and handed over to the International Criminal Court, and pre-trial proceedings began. This included confirming the charges against Ali Kushab and ensuring that the prosecution builds a sufficient case to take to trial. So now, in April, 15 years since the arrest warrant, he is now in the dock at the International Criminal Court. It's been a long time coming. It's involved a number of different states, cooperation with the International Criminal Court, but fundamentally, perhaps, the thing that ensured that Ali Kushab was actually arrested is the fall of the al-Bashir government in Sudan.
Thank you very much, Otilia.
All right, Abd-al-Rahim, now, Otilia clearly stated this connection of how it all started. Now, we have the Sudanese Protest Professional Association in a statement. They said that a solution to Sudan's political crisis begins with the complete overthrow of the military council and bringing members to justice. We have the first ICC trial of the Darfur crimes, and so far Koshai has pleaded not guilty. Why is criminal accountability so important, and are you pleased with what is going on, especially at the ICC trial?
It's actually, this is, yes, to bring criminal to justice. This is a very important thing. If this happened from before, I mean, like long time ago, and what's happened in Darfur is being, people being punished because they have done those crimes, and justice were there. I mean, like people like al-Bashir, like al-Burhan and Hamdan Daglo in Sudan, they will not be ruling Sudan now, and they will not be in the military council at this moment. So the demands, I mean, like what we should say, I mean, like not just Koshib or Abd-al-Rahman Koshib alone. There is more criminals whom they are under warrant as well, as they're still in large. So they should bring them to justice as well. I mean, like for the sake of this, for the sake of the victims, for the sake of the justice itself. Like Al-Burhan himself, he is one of the suspected people. Daglu, Hamdan Daglu, who is vice president now in Sudan and acting as the president. These people should, I mean, like getting this court now should make this is happening. And not because they are ruling and because we are just against them. I am saying that no, these are real criminals and their names are there. This man Al-Burhan, one day he said that he to the Darfurian people, he is their God in his word. Hamdan Daglo is documented that he's leader of Janjaweed. He is the leader of Janjaweed, not Koshi. This is not I mean, like to defend Koshib or anything, but he's part of this team. Why they are leaving them is still in Sudan in the prison, those people, and these are empowered. And not to go far, on this coming Friday, we are going to The Hague as well, and there is a demonstration, and there's going to be a demand to take action against this current military agenda, in particularly against Burhan and Hemeti from the Sudanese people all around the world, specifically in Europe. They are taking, they are going to go there on this coming Friday. And I'm going to be one of the people who are going to try to meet the prosecutor to arrest, to stop the type of crimes against humanity, which is being committed since the coup of 25th of October. So what is going on now, I think it is something good for the victims of Darfur war, and for all the Sudanese people. And people in Sudan are looking at this with a type of at least this is something acceptable to them, and this is giving them promises that nobody can run away or can run from justice and can do things against law, even if it is 15 or 20 years in time.
Thank you, Abd-al-Rahim.
Justice must be served.
Thank you, Abd-al-Rahim. I'd like to bring in Otilia here. Still staying on the theme of justice, Abd-al-Rahim mentioned that the vice president of the military council in Sudan, Meti, is one of those indicted to have committed crimes in Darfur. He did also say that General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan is one of those that should face justice. My question to you, Otilia, is this. Who else is sought by the ICC on alleged crimes committed in Darfur? You did mention Omar al-Bashir. He has a warrant on him. It was international news when that was issued. And why hasn't Sudan turned over the other suspects to the ICC, and what more does it need to do? I'm not expecting Al-Burhan to take the next flight to The Hague and hand
possibly.
himself in.
Right. So one of the challenges, and I'll start with the challenge here because I think it helps in framing the conversation better. One of the challenges is that because Sudan is not a state party to the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, the situation that the ICC is investigating is the situation that was referred by the UN Security Council in 2005. And so it only deals with crimes at a very specific period in time. And as was pointed out, no accountability for those crimes has in fact allowed impunity to prevail. So what we have seen now in the cases before the International Criminal Court is in fact that the likelihood that it will only be Ali Kushab who will face trial at the International Criminal Court, at least for those crimes in 2003 and 2004, is increasingly so. This is not to say that the ICC is not looking at other suspects, some of whom it hasn't named as yet. Of course, we've mentioned the two other indictees of the court, including the former president of Sudan himself, Omar al-Bashir. But, and this is perhaps the challenge, it's almost like a catch-22 situation, is where you have a government that still removes itself from justice mechanisms such as the International Criminal Court, such as the African Court of Human and People's Rights, for example, accountability becomes far more difficult to achieve. Ideally, these would be domestic prosecutions, but we've heard already with the current government in Sudan, it is unlikely that there would be accountability for those international crimes committed not only between 2003 and 2004, but since, and in particular, the rising crimes that have been committed, unfortunately, against protesters, not only from 2018, 2019, but more recently with the recent protests from late 2021 to date. The reality is, in the absence of accountability, even symbolic accountability for one individual, we will see this glaring impunity gap in Sudan, and unfortunately, it could grow.
All right, thank you so much, Atilia. We do hope for the best at the ICC. Of course, we also wait to know what the penalties will be in the event that Koshai is convicted. Thank you so much, Atilia and Mwanganidze, for joining us on the conversation. And of course, Abderrahim Abayazid for joining us on the conversation.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate your contributions and insights.
Thank you.
Okay, this is where we begin to wrap things up on today's edition of The Conversation. We looked at the People's Democratic Party, the opposition party in Nigeria, throwing its presidential ticket open and saying no to the zoning formula. And we also looked at the recent trial at ICC of Koshai.
And that's all. See you again on Friday. I'm Rita Omodia.
And I'm Gbenga Aborowa. Bye-bye.